In just a few minutes, small business owners can now sign up for Blackfoot Communication Services. Whether it's dependable voice options or internet services, sign up simply by visiting blackfootsmallbusiness.com. Click on the services you wish, select an installation time and date, and you're done. Small business services at the touch of your fingers. Connect to more with Blackfoot Communications and blackfootsmallbusiness.com.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Colter, Nuanez, Skyline Sports, SkylineSportsMT.com. New edition here at Skyline Sports. If you've been following along for a while, we try to put out early in the week each week a first look, looking at the opponents for both the Montana State Bobcats and the Montana Grizzlies. We're going to have a new video element. That story includes things about coaching staffs, the university. I love the little quick hit parts that we do, just looking at the university as a whole, as well as what they specialize in. I do think that maybe is something that's being pushed to the side at the Power 5 rank because it seems that football is the highest priority, but there still are some schools that have academic priorities that do influence the makeup then of their football rosters. And so today, we're going to talk about the Oregon State Beavers. Montana State plays at Oregon State, but not really. Oregon State located in Corvallis, Oregon, but this game will be played downtown, Providence Park, downtown Portland. So, going to be an interesting fold there. It's a place the Bobcats have been before, but not with this coaching staff and none of these players either. When the Bobcats played at Portland State last year, they actually played out in Hillsboro. Oregon State there in Corvallis. It is a land-grant university, a high priority on engineering and research. So, very similar to Montana State. Oregon State has 27,000 undergraduates and another 5,000 postgraduate students, so about 32,000 students there in Corvallis. So that makes it about twice the size of Montana State. But a great school by all accounts, one that is always highly ranked when it comes to high research, Carnegie-level high research. It's also a doctoral university based on their high research activity and one of the premier engineering schools in the Western United States, in the United States, period. So that usually has a distinct impact on the complexion of your football program. They also have a man in Jonathan Smith who's an Oregon State alum leading the way, and I do think that is important in a place like Oregon State. Oregon State is sort of in this world all alone, because they are a land-grant public university that has high academics, but they are also not Stanford and Cal. They are not really like any of the other schools in the Pac-12. Oregon State and Washington State are the two that are sort of outside looking in compared to many of the other schools. And what's going to happen at the top level of college football, I'm not sure. I don't know where Oregon State lands. They're fundamentally different than their in-state rival, the Oregon Ducks, partially because of just the fundraising that has been able to be generated at Oregon, particularly because of their deep ties to Nike, because Phil Knight has such an affinity for Oregon, the founder of Nike. But I do think Jonathan Smith leading the Beavers, he was a part of Oregon State the last time Oregon State was good. And it looks like Oregon State has a chance to be good again, and they have been pretty good so far this year. They've beaten a pair of Mountain West schools, but two of the best Mountain West schools. They beat Boise State to open the season, and then they went to Fresno State last week. And Fresno's a good team. Fresno's a good program right now. And they went down there and they smacked, or they shouldn't say smacked. They smacked Boise State. They beat Fresno State 35-32. But a 2-0 start for the Beavers. Jonathan Smith was the quarterback there at Oregon State, a 3-year starter, one of the better quarterbacks they've had in their school's history, particularly when it comes to winning. He ended up throwing for nearly 10,000 yards and 55 touchdowns in his 3+ years as a starter. As a junior in 2000 under Dennis Erickson, who's kind of the tie that binds here, by the way. Dennis Erickson, we're efforting him this week to join us on Nuanez Now, my daily ESPN radio show. But Dennis Erickson played quarterback at Montana State in the late 1960s and then was a assistant at Montana State in the 70s before then launching a college football Hall of Fame coaching career. But he was at Oregon State in the late 90s and early 2000s. That's when Oregon State had their best success. So in 2000, when Dennis Erickson was the head coach, Jonathan Smith was the quarterback on the team that's widely considered the greatest team in school history. That team finished 11-1. They won a share of their first Pac-10 title in 36 years, and they finished ranked number 4 in the country. That team also included the outstanding wide receiver duo of Chad Johnson and TJ Hushmanzada. Jonathan Smith was named the Fiesta Bowl MVP during his junior year there at Oregon State. Jonathan Smith then started his college coaching career as a GA at his alma mater. Then he was the quarterbacks coach at Idaho from 2004 until 2009. He had a brief stint in Missoula, Montana as the offensive coordinator under Robin Pflugrad in 2010 and 2011. And then he went to Boise State as a quarterbacks coach under Chris Peterson. Then he followed Peterson to Washington, where he was the offensive coordinator from 2014 until 2017. And he's been the head coach at Oregon State since 2018. 2-10 his first season, 5-7 in year 2, then 2-5 in the abbreviated fall of 2020 season, and then in 2021, the first winning season of his tenure there, a 7-6 record. Oregon State went 5-4 in Pac-12 play, and they advanced to a bowl. They lost in the LA Bowl, but a little bit of upward momentum.
Restaurant Supply Team with Captain Darian White. Cola Bad Bear with rebounds. Madison Jackson assists. And your shooter from downtown, Leah Beatty. J&V Restaurant Supply. Savor the difference.
Some players to watch for the Oregon State Beavers. The number one guy that Brent Vigen, Montana State's head coach, pointed at when he was reviewing the players to watch was Jack Coletto. Jack Coletto is a two-way player, which is something Montana State's fans are very familiar with, having watched Troy Anderson. Jack Coletto was just named to the Paul Hornung watch list earlier this week, and he is a linebacker primarily. He's got 6 tackles so far this season. He's a 6'3" redshirt senior out of Camas, Washington, which there are some ties here with guys that have played against each other or with each other at the high school level. Several Camas papermakers on the Montana State roster, including starting left tackle Rush Reimer, who's a couple years younger than Jack Coletto, and starting punter Bryce Layton as well. But Coletto, even though he's sort of a rotational linebacker, he also gets carries down by the goal line, and he has a team-high 3 touchdowns rushing so far this year. So that's always an intriguing thing, always something that's going to catch your eye. The starting running back there for Oregon State is Desean Fenwick. He's averaging almost 5 yards per carry so far, 141 yards through 2 games. The starting quarterback there at Oregon State is Chance Nolan. He's thrown for 470 yards and 3 touchdowns so far. He's a redshirt junior out of Paloma Valley High School in Menifee, California. So he comes from that powerhouse league there in Southern California. Last year, he was the starter as well. I guess he's a Saddleback College, junior college transfer who actually started for the first time as a redshirt sophomore during that abbreviated 2020 season. But last year, in his first full season, Chance Nolan threw for 2,677 yards, 19 touchdowns, and was second in the Pac-12 in passer rating, and honorable mention all-conference honoree there on the offensive side of the ball. Most of the best players, though, for Oregon State reside either on their offensive line or on their front seven. The preseason Pac-12 team included a pair of offensive linemen, Joshua Gray and Brandon Kipper, on the second team preseason. So a couple of the better offensive linemen in the league. The only first-team All-League preseason selection for Oregon State was Omar Speitz. He's a linebacker, probably their best player, certainly their most decorated player. Jaden Grant, a defensive back, as well as Renzon Wright, who's also a DB, and Luke Locker, who is a punter, and Coletto. They were all second-team preseason All-Pac-12 picks. And Jake Levengood, an offensive lineman, he was an honorable mention All-League Pac-12, preseason Pac-12 pick as well. One more thought on Omar Speitz. He's probably the best NFL prospect on this team. He wears number 1. He's got 11 tackles and 2 tackles for loss so far this season. He runs really, really well. We were watching Monday Night Football last night at our house, and we were talking about sort of the evolution of the smaller linebacker, because Jordan Brooks, who is a great player for the Seattle Seahawks, he is one of the leading tacklers in the National Football League, and he's not very big. But that's sort of the new brand name. I mean, even you look at some of the best young linebackers in the league, Devin White, Devin Bush, Levante David, those guys are all not that tall. They're just sort of all this similar 6'1 to 6'2, 225 to 230 pounds. Omar Speitz is just like that. He's 6'1", 233 pounds, Philadelphia native, and a junior, a guy who can really run, but he's probably Oregon State's best pro prospect. Last couple things on the Beavers here. Thanks for tuning in and following along here on Skyline Sports, MT.com. A couple more connections from the coaching staff. The defensive line coach for Oregon State is Legi Suanoa, who was the defensive line coach at the University of Montana for quite some time. Jim Michalk, who was the offensive line coach at Montana State in the 1990s, he is now the offensive line coach and the run game coordinator there at OSU. Kefensi Heinzone, who also spent time with Smith while Smith was at Montana on Robin Pflugrad's staff. Heinzone is the wide receivers coach and the passing game coordinator. And then your last connection is Trent Bray. Trent Bray is the defensive coordinator and the linebackers coach, but he was also in the mix to replace Jeff Choate as the head coach at Montana State. Just a name that was floated around. I don't know how seriously he or Montana State considered each other, but he was certainly a guy that was, in the mix, certainly had calls with the MSU athletic administration, and so that's an interesting fold as well. Oh, and one last connection I had forgotten. Ryan Separato, who was the quality control guy at Montana State in 2016, I believe, 2017, he then spent some time at Washington State, and now he is the special teams quality control assistant there at Oregon State. So Brent Vigen addressed that in his press conference. A lot of crossover when it comes to coaches in the West between the Big Sky, the Pac-12, and the Mountain West, and it's no different in this game. So there you go. That's a little first look for you at the Oregon State Beavers. Montana State plays Oregon State at Providence Park, downtown Portland, on Saturday evening. We'll have full coverage for you at SkylineSportsMT.com. In the meantime, follow along. We'll have tons of podcasts and stories and great photography and videos for you coming up throughout this week and throughout every week. Skyline Sports, every day, every season.